We'll then give that to Andrew. I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Most of us probably aren't aware that this school even exists right here in Orange County, but I'd like to introduce you to the leader of Grace Classical Academy. Gina Bonecutter, would you come on up and tell us about a very, very remarkable school?
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come here and speak to you today. My name is Gina Bonecutter, and I am the head of school for Grace Classical Academy in Laguna Niguel. I first just want to say it's always so exciting to come here because sometimes when we're just working hard each and every day, you forget just how powerful the work of the church is in the world, and it's just such a huge encouragement to come here and just be reminded to keep going every day. So thank you for that. To start, I want to ask you a question. How many of you are aware that our educational system is in trouble today? Yeah, it's pretty universal. Would you say that the educational system is in trouble because our teachers don't care, are unqualified, or are incompetent? I say for the most part, we probably wouldn't. I think the problem is much bigger than that. The clicker. Good. Okay. I've been involved with education for about 15 years in one format or another, and I am raising 4 boys, so I have spent a lot of time thinking about education, and I want to share my thoughts with you. I think that one of the biggest problems with our educational system is that we're not producing students who can think, and that is a big problem. Kids who can't think become a big target of the secular agenda. And for an example of that, just think of all the attention that our LOFO voters get in the media, and it's almost, instead of lamenting it, it's almost in a joking matter. C.S. Lewis, who I'm sure you're all aware of as an author, but lesser known as he was very involved in educational reform in his day. And a quote from him is that he said is, "The difference between the old and the new education being, in a word, the old was a kind of propagation, men transmitting manhood to men. The new is merely propaganda." I think if C.S. Lewis was alive today, he might use the word indoctrination rather than propaganda. Unfortunately, instead of transferring manhood, we're just transferring facts from teacher to student. Why is this? We began to see the slide in our educational system at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution created a high demand for factory workers, not problem solvers. So instead of our kids studying Latin and reading the great books of Western civilization, they were given watered-down textbooks with one purpose in mind, for our kids to memorize information and pass a test. So what future do you want for your children? A factory worker or a thinker? Mind you, there's absolutely nothing degrading about being a factory worker. The problem is that they weren't creating well-rounded individuals who happen to be factory workers. A well-rounded individual who happens to be a factory worker can still be a large contributing citizen in our society. The goal of education needs to be to produce reasonable and responsible men and women who are responsible citizens contributing to the welfare of our society. I'm sure you all recognize Steve Jobs. He knew the power and importance of bringing well-rounded individuals to his company. He's quoted as saying, Picasso had a saying. He said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." Jobs went on to say, "We have always been shameless about stealing great ideas, and I think part of what made the Macintosh great was that the people working on it were musicians and poets and zoologists and historians who also happen to be the best computer scientists in the world. Where will these great artists come from in the future if our educational system is simply about transferring facts to our children? So the Common Core, I'm sure with all the hype in the media, you all at one time or another are hearing about the Common Core. The Common Core is the public school's solution to the problem that we are not creating kids who can think, who can speak, and who are well-rounded. And I'm sure you're also hearing of the many concerns that come with the Common Core. I think the two most important concerns are the philosophical agenda. A lot of people don't realize that Barack Obama and Bill Ayers in their early days were the ones who started the whole concept of the Common Core. And of course, most people know of the Gates involvement with that. And so you have a very one-sided philosophical agenda. But even more importantly, is that our public school elites are creating yet another untested educational model. The irony of this is that they've actually taken a time-tested model of teaching children to think and producing well-rounded citizens and turned it on its head. For an example of this, they are going to be taking little kindergartners and first graders and putting them into Socratic circles so that they can discuss how to solve the global issues of our day. I don't know how much time you get to spend with 5- and 6-year-olds, but that is not a good use of their time. And the sad thing is not just that they're being asked to do that, but they're not being asked to do the very things that are going to train those critical thinking skills so that when they are ready to be involved in these conversations, they are also equipped. So is there an answer? That is why Grace Classical Academy was founded 11 years ago. I'm going to spend the next few minutes speaking about classical education. It's not just Grace Academy, but Grace Classical Academy. But like everyone else that has been up here today, that is generally a much longer conversation than the time that I have left. So if you'd like more in-depth information, I have more information on my table, and I'd be happy to share that with you. So with classical education, the goal is to teach kids to teach them to think critically, and then to teach them to express their critical thinking. The trivium is a medieval term that actually has a philosophy that dates back to ancient Greece and Rome. It's a Latin word that means three-way, and it refers to the first three of the 7 liberal arts, which are grammar, logic, and rhetoric. Dorothy Sayers, who was a very good friend of C.S. Lewis's, who was also involved in educational reform, wrote a paper called The Lost Tools of Learning, and she was lamenting the state of the educational system in England in her day, and she called the educators back to this classical model of education. And she took the concept of the trivium and combined it with the understanding of the developmental stages that our students go through in school. So what are these stages? The grammar stage is kindergarten through 6th grade. And the kids in this stage memorize things like no one else can. They are sponges. But it's very important, as I spoke about before, that we don't want it to be rote memorization. So we use strategic memorization. They memorize through chants, songs, plays. And what they are memorizing is equally important. When our kids come to school, we teach them how to spell before they learn how to read. They memorize the 70 basic phonograms and the 28 basic spelling rules, and they learn to analyze their own language. This is the first building block of these higher level thinking skills that we want to see in about 7th grade. We follow that up in 2nd grade with formal Latin instruction. Latin has so many wonderful byproducts, but the most important being careful and precise thinking, which I think we all know is lacking in our culture. Interlaced with the academic rigor is teaching them a Christian worldview. One of the primary ways we do this with the students is through our history program. Our students go through, between kindergarten and 8th grade, 2 cycles of the history of Western civilization. So in 2nd grade, they begin it, and they study, starting with creation. They study ancient Egypt. In 2nd grade, they study ancient Greece and Rome. In 3rd grade, they study medieval history. In 4th grade, they study medieval history. In 5th grade, they study early American, and in 6th grade, modern history. Because we're doing it according to their developmental patterns, the kids are so engaged in their education. Whenever we have visitors come to the school, they always leave us saying, "I cannot believe how engaged and how much fun these kids are having in class." After 6th grade, they hit logic school, which, as a mother of 4 boys, I think is the most genius thing you could ever do with your tween to teenagers. In 7th grade, they begin studying formal or informal logic, which is fallacies, and in 8th grade, they study formal logic. Just to show you kind of the power of teaching kids these fallacies, one of my kids, who is a junior this year, so he's in AP US History, had to write a paper, and they give them quick response time. So he was presented with the concept. A lot of people have heard of it, but it's the progressive idea that the American Revolution was not revolutionary. It was one group of rich white men taking power from another group of rich white men. So how would you respond if you had 10 minutes to think that through? Well, his response was that that is a hasty generalization. Just because they're 2 groups of rich white men, there are many other things to consider. But putting them in the same group is like saying Bill Gates and Brad Pitt are one and the same. No sooner could Bill Gates take Brad Pitt's job as the Hollywood heartthrob than could Brad Pitt take Bill Gates' job as the runner of Microsoft. Our kids can also watch CNN, MSNBC, and detect all the fallacies that come through the nightly telecast. They can also do it with